Okay, let's talk finance. As you get older, you get more money. Your income increases, you get raises as you age, you get more experience, you demand higher payback. And then you turn 65 and it just stops. That last decade before you retire is your peak net worth, peak income, peak savings. Now, normally, this wouldn't matter. This is a pre-industrial demographic structure. Children at the bottom, retirees at the top, everybody else stacked up. Normally, it's a pure pyramid because of mortality, which means that when you turn 65, you're a small sliver of the population, and you're replaced by a larger sliver, and so on down the pyramid. So if a small group retires and they take their money with them and they cash out of stocks and bonds and go into stocks and bonds and go into T-bills and cash, it's not a big deal because we always know what the proportion is going to be. It's the same almost every year. It's small, it's minor, it doesn't matter. But after World War II, the world industrialized and it urbanized. And in a pre-industrial agrarian system, kids are free labor. You have a whole bunch of them. But when you move into a condo, kids become very expensive conversation pieces. Adults aren't stupid, they have fewer. And it changes the demographic structure. Here's ours. Got to go through the generations so you understand what's happening both from a financial and a labor point of view. We have to start with the baby boomers. Largest generation we have ever had. The problem with the boomers, well, one of the problems with the boomers, is that they're retiring. They have dominated our financial and our workforce for decades. When they entered the market back in the 1960s, they supersaturated, they kept labor costs low until now. But now they're retiring, and they're taking all of their investments with them. On average, the American boomer retires in the fourth quarter of this year. We know they're liquidating their investments because they've been doing it for a couple of years already. We hit the tipping point in the fourth quarter. We know that between the first quarter of last year and the last quarter of next year, that the cost of capital has to go up by at least a factor of 4 simply from them removing their money from the markets. That was always unavoidable. We've known this is coming since the 60s. We're finally here. Are you ready? No one is. Gen X, this is my generation. Until recently, we were the smallest generation. Now, when we look at the boomers, I think the thing about the boomers that disgusts us the most is how they treat their families. Because remember, when the boomers entered the market in the 60s and 70s and 80s, there were so many of them, they pushed down the cost of capital. And that forced a lot of boomers to make the second spouse enter the market as well, to make ends meet. But that supersaturated even more and pushed down the cost of labor even more. That's the primary reason why the boomers have had the highest divorce rate in American history, that financial pressure on the family unit. Xers look at this and say, not us. For us, our time is at least as important as our money. And we have a much higher proportion of single income earning families, and which means that we have a far lower divorce rate because of it. Now, that hasn't worked for us very well until recently, because we had 1 billion boomers out there and 1.4 Xers. So we were the perennial intern generation. We had the slowest recompense generation of any American generation because we're competing with this massive swath, and we were the low man on the totem pole. But now the boomers are all retiring. Even if all Gen Xers wanted to work, and we do not, there are not enough of us to fill all those shoes. Which means that we have gone from the lowest raises ever to the highest in just the last 3 years. And it's going to last for at least another decade. It's going to get better every year. Gen Xers, your time has come. And the rest of you can suck it. Zoomers, these are my generation's kids. They are not millennials. No. Now, millennials accurately are believed to be good at managerial skills, good at people skills. They're collaborative, they're social, they're cooperative. These are all very positive traits that is absolutely backed up in the data. That is not Zoomers. The millennials were raised by the boomers to be told they were special, and we don't keep track of the score at the soccer game. You can be whatever you want, you can live in the basement as long as you want. No, Gen X did not raise our kids that way. You can't trust anyone. You have to be better. Not better than the millennials, better than everyone. You can rely on no one. They're overachievers. But they're also antisocial because they're like, you turn 18, you're out of my house. We're going to keep track of the score of the soccer game. We're going to put it in a little book. We're going to read it to you at night. They're pathologically neurotic. They're the most medicated generation we've ever had. They have the highest suicide rate we've ever had. They're antisocial. People talk about the millennials being damaged by COVID because they couldn't be social. For the Zoomers, it was the best 2 years of their life. No one expected them to leave their room. They loved it. Now, if you want to hire coders who can work remote, this is brilliant. You got a generation to choose from. If you want them to actually show up and speak with you or work in a group, oh my God, no. So not only are they the smallest generation we've ever had, they are the most focused on a very specific niche in the economy for their labor force. So whatever labor problems you think you're having, if it requires them being outside or in an office, you aren't going to find many Zoomers at all for the next 20 years. Now, of course, then there's the millennials. Now, we've talked about some of the positive traits. Let's talk about some of the negative, just to be fair. Lazy, entitled, show up to work at 11:30 on Tuesdays. It's all true. That's also backed up in the data. Totally true. For half of them. The other half have always done everything we expected, wrong word, demanded. They graduated from college a semester early. They didn't go to Europe for 11 years to find themselves. They went straight into the workforce. And because of it, they got screwed. When the financial crisis hit in 2008, they were the last people in, and so they were the first people kicked out. Whether it's because they did everything right or everything wrong, the average millennial lost 3 to 5 years of work experience in their 20s. They will never get that back. They will always be behind. They are the least skilled generation for their age that we have ever had. Now, there's a lot of them, and that's great. But because of that skill deficit, we now have 4 layers to our labor shortage. The boomers are gone. The Xers are insufficient in numbers, even if they wanted to fully participate. The millennials are low-skilled for their class, and the Zoomers have boxed themselves in. If there is hope for getting back to where we were in 2019, it still lies with millennials, but not directly. It lies with their kids. A large generation generates a large generation. We have to wait, all we have to do is wait for the millennials' kids to be born, to grow up, to go to school, and enter the workforce. Which means the environment that we're in right now, where we have a shortage of 400,000 workers, is going to increase each and every year until 2032, where it will peak at 900,000. And the millennials' kids will finally enter the market in 2045. That's all we have to do is wait till 2045. Or we can suck it up and find a way to deal with it, because this is our normal for a good long time. And it's so much worse everywhere else.